more and
There's so much that is ramping up at this present moment, so much that's unfolding, and it feels, really momentous to be gathered here together. And so, thank you all for being with us today. Maybe share in the chat something that's on your heart, where you're joining from, and what right now is lighting you up, what you're feeling very enthusiastic about. We're going to be talking about the energies of the season, and what's really on your heart to create and bring forward.
yeah. And I feel like, there's such, as always, right? The more and more sort of intensified that these frequencies become, the more heart connection, community, sharing, transparency, vulnerability, is also so nourishing. And so we're excited to bring this in as a community connection tonight, and really kind of get into all the different things that are downloading. And and we were laughing because we were having a little comedy skit beforehand, and we were like, man, we wish we had done this.
Recorded
I
this.
know. But well, would you like to kick it off a little bit with what you're feeling and sensing, with astrology for right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and please, please share what, in the chat if you have any questions as we're kind of going through. But I would like to open it up with some things that are, happening right now that are significant from an astrological perspective. We just ended Pisces season, which is the end of the astrological year, and Aries season, which we just embarked upon. We're starting into Aries season, which is the beginning of an astrological new year. And it's a really palpable shift in energy. We're moving from a water sign to fire sign. And it's also, the spring equinox, which is a really significant time. We can talk about really the balance that we have during this time between, an equal day and equal night during the spring equinox. And that is really what's being called, I feel like, for at this time, is a greater sense of balance and harmony.
Yeah. In all areas, right? I mean, historically, we know spring to be a time for, out with the old, in with the new, spring cleaning, so to speak. And so I know we've all practiced that and engaged in it, to varying degrees throughout our lifetime. But there's this palpable and very clear dropping in of the greater significance of that, with all the different layers and levels of what's coming through energetically, and and through astrology and through the alignment of everything. It's like never before have I sort of received the message and felt, to your point, that palpable shift of moving from sort of riding some waves and moving through, and navigating through to, like it is on, the inner Aries, whether you're Aries or not, is evoking in all beings, I feel like.
Yes, it is. It's a really activating energy, and also with, the solar energy that we're receiving at this time, it is extremely activating. And, Pisces is that collective consciousness energy, and Aries is really the energy of knowing yourself in human form. It's the consciousness of being in the body and discovering anew, starting a new journey. And that really truly takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, I can't say how many times in the last 4 days or so, I keep getting a drop in from the Phoenix, from the archetype of the Phoenix. And so, with all the Christos plasma technology that's coming through, and and being that a spring, I mean, there is this huge catalyst right now for rebirth and resurrection. And, I feel like the Phoenix comes in, and I know you were sharing, earlier too, when we were chatting about the fieriness of Aries season, right? And this, the ever more present through all the waves of plasma light and transparency, how suppressed, to your, I think, exact wording, is the emotional field of of anger and frustration, and the buildup, right? And we know we've had a lot of buildup taking place over the last few linear years. So what coupled with our own ancestral imprints and collective imprints and our own soul's journey, is this collective buildup of sort of following in the cattle chute and continuing to give away our power and our sovereignty and our freedom, while swallowing the frustration and going against the core essence of expression, right? So with everything taking place, with the solar storms and everything taking place right now, I feel like it's a pressure cooker that's like ready to really release.
Yes, yeah. And it is like you mentioned the last linear year. And I think it is important to reflect on how much transformation has taken place over the course of the last year, the last 2 linear years. We were talking earlier about, the sensation of really grounding while the ground is moving. And that is truly a theme that we're sort of navigating as a collective at this point in time. But to your sharing around the energy of fire, is like the healthy ways of connecting with that sacred emotion, right? Like whether it's through movement, or whether it's through dance or drumming, or just
toning, letting it out, right? It's like sometimes we feel, we hear that expression growing up, and like, I just want to scream, right? And it's like, okay, well, there's that, and that's really expressive and amazing, and and it can be so alchemizing, and you almost feel that sense of like peace and like endorphins released when you allow for whatever's down, all the way from the ground floor up, right, to like come out in expression. Yeah, so I love the fact that you bring that in and talk about different ways of movement and expression, and releasing it, because it's not going anywhere. We know this, right? Like until we honor that which we've chosen consciously and unconsciously to participate in, and to experience and to imprint, right? It's going to remain there, awaiting for our discovery. So
it is. Yeah. It's a sacred invitation. And if you think of the element of fire, fire wants to move. Fire is dynamic. It's that movement energy. And so when we suppress it, or we, turn the other way and not acknowledge it, it festers, right? It's like the cauldron, like smoke that's billowing.
I love that. Totally. And, and so let's just, go to the elephant in the closet. Like, I don't know about everybody else, but there is a lot of energetic vomiting, and, and this like sort of spewing of projecting that's taking place from areas and spaces and places within, where we are suppressing the our desire, or even our ability maybe to witness what we've created and what we're holding on to. And because of the catalyzing energy and every coming in through sort of like every direction, right? I feel like as even the week before going into moving out of Pisces into Aries, there was a ramping up of the spewing. And I think it was funny because what was coming in way of visualization, as we were discussing this beforehand, it's like the baby dragon, right? It's like the baby dragon that just realizes, wait a second, I have this ability to express myself through fire. I have this ability to, so it's, it's learning, and it's, spewing. And I almost feel like that metaphor could be very much, linked to the inner child, that is wounded, holding on to these feelings of, suppressed feelings of frustration and anger and all the societal programs and beliefs that have led us to feel that it's not safe to express those things. And so, it's like these flames are kind of coming out and projecting out versus, the phoenix that comes through to share, like, okay, let's take this in. Let's, go within, find that center point, find that way, like moving into the alchemy, moving into, the inner flame, allowing ourselves to really go in and explore what wants to be honored and recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mars rules Aries, and Mars is a planet of forward movement, right? And action, how we do action in the world, but it also can be a planet of aggression, right? The shadow side of that. So I think it's really important to bring to the light, and honor emotions that are arising, whatever they may be, because that's all that, fire wants to do, is to be acknowledged, to be held, to be witnessed. And so I think that's so important. But really, when you're talking about the Phoenix rising, like what I'm really connecting with is like that Scorpio south node, Taurus north node. And that's something that is really significant that we're navigating, as a collective. We saw this shift, a nodal shift between Gemini, Sagittarius nodal axis, and then coming into this year, the movement into Taurus, Scorpio. And there are so many palpable themes that we are really, being called as a collective to evolutionarily focus on. And I think one of them is, that theme of rebirthing energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, looking at the shadow, that's Pluto, and that element of releasing any type of, outdated structures or systems of power, and really truly coming into our own personal power.
Hallelujah on that one, right? I mean, it is true. Like, we keep hearing it, and something that I feel, was so significant. When we started moving through the February 22nd portal and opening, what was shown is that in that expression of that taking place, and I'm sure in conjunction with all the things that are being brought through that you're sharing, with planetary alignment, etc. What I was able to view and see on a very, holographic expression is that there was a shift in the poles, that took place, and on the macro level, of course, of Gaia, but then it's never, we're never left out of that equation. So on the micro level of humanity as well, and in that shift, and in the opening that took place, there was such a huge coming in, pouring forth, reopening of very specific stargates and portals to connect us to these high angelic, source angelic families, creator families. And when that came through and everything sort of came into alignment, and it would be challenging to put into words all that was being shown and expressed, Gaia transcended her blueprint beyond what was originally thought or seen by even, some of these councils of light and, galactic councils, to bring forth an even greater opportunity of sovereignty. And so what was shown in that is that, of course, we're the micro of the macro of the macro, and so forth, right? It's like, an eternal expression of Russian dolls. And so when they were showing, as she chose and moved into the transcendence of her originally thought to be her blueprint, into this greater invitation and alignment with sovereignty, with inner, power, there was a grand disconnect of a lot of the systems that were created in the first, second, and third density of distortion and consciousness interfacing, whereby this whole ping pong match of projection and of like Gaia having had this sort of part of her assignment to transmute a lot of the energetic densities and mental densities, etc., of humanity, shifted into this place where it's like, we're all here to recreate the grid of unified consciousness law of one, and we're all here to do it in a way of owning every single fractal of our consciousness together as a one collective. Yet there's no longer this deep entanglement whereby, you know, humanity through, you know, patterns and you know, understandably so, of disassociation and victimizer is able to sort of create the weightedness that was originally the pattern, right, upon Gaia. So talk about shaking things up and really catapulting humanity into a place of the archetype of the sovereign being, which is so in polarity to everything that has been dialed into, you know, the fracturing of our consciousness for the last, you know, arguably millions of years, right? And so what happens, right? What happens when there's a huge shakeup like that? But, you know, it's like the rug got pulled out from under. Now I'm really like, it's going from an intellectual concept and how people are sharing and talking about it to it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, it's happening, whether you're engaging in it or not, which is why it's like, let's find those practices of grounding and of self-nourishment and of connecting to the 0 point, you know, that still point, that place of like, okay, let me get still, let me get neutral, let me get centered, let me start to really come out of the victimizer programming, come into this place of not seeking outside of myself for power and sovereignty and freedom, and go within. So we know these are the themes of this particular ascension cycle, you know, and it just up leveled like big time. Yeah.
Wow, that is profound. I love that you saw that and shared that. And it's just, you know, I have to share that it's just so significant for all of us to be here now, you know, and for anybody that feels like for some reason they don't have an important part to play, that is just simply not true. I mean, this is such a critical time, and I really believe that power comes from, you know, our own giving ourselves permission to express in the way. And that's what I feel like really, you know, there's this opening up of self-love and self-worth and self-honoring. And that really is leaving the material age. You know, it's embracing worth and abundance that's beyond that. It's a super abundance, and it's an abundance of sharing your gifts and being in community and being in harmony. And that really is the energy of creating the new earth. And I love that you brought that through about February 22nd, because I mean, so much significance around that point in time. I mean, that was, you know, the starting point of the US Pluto return, which we know, you know, is going to take place for a period of time. But that is, you know, a period really globally, collectively, of looking at shadows, looking at outdated systems and structures, and really truly embracing a new way of, you know, without hierarchies, you know, more of like a circular way where we learn from the trees, we learn from the animals, we learn from the elders, like, you know, this beautiful flow of community. And what's really truly beautiful about that is, you know, 2022 is at the numerology is a 6, but it's also there's so many 2s, right, that are happening this year, and such a significance around the 222 portal in many, you know, forms. And I think both of those energies are really important right now. Like 2, you know, you talk about partnership, you talk about balance, talk about harmony, and, you know, 6 is the energy of like, you know, family and love and nurturing, and all of these themes are just so important right now.
Yeah, I love that. And as you're talking about it, and they're dropping in the 6, they're dropping it in on a multiversal level as well, to further kind of touch upon what was shown with these, you know, source angelic creator collectives that are, you know, regaining access at this time in a palpable expression. So talk about reconnection, you know, family connection, you know, as a one, right? The law of one, family, like, you know, I am you, you are me, you know, and really, but going down on a deep cellular resurrection level. Like, we've been hearing about it, we've been receiving these codes, these crystalline codes and DNA adjustments and activations, and and they're significant. They've been laying the foundation. They've been building, building the base, right? Base codes for what's now coming through. And so, we've been hearing it for years, and it wasn't to create any fear or anything like that, but it was just to give everybody, a heads up and a home court advantage, if you will, which was, hey, those who are embracing, those who are in the flow of really going in and with that, that lens of transparency and doing the inner work and really owning every fractal of their consciousness, whether it's been previously deemed, judged good or bad, and just, coming into this place, are going to have a far easier integration process, which is not really going to be easy for anyone, even at the highest levels of ascension already, experienced. It's still going to be a grand opportunity to really evolve in the mastery of neutrality, of presence, of witnessing observer, of owning every aspect of, conscious and unconscious, thoughts, words, and actions, right? But certainly those who have been paving the path, right, are going to have, let's just say, it may, be like just pockets of turbulence experience versus, what could be really kind of a rocky experience, of the next several months.
Yeah, I love that you brought that through, and that is shared with the energy of a true pioneer, and it's true, Aries wants to go into those places and wants to evolve with a self-awareness and growth and expansion, and that definitely, I think sometimes we think of the spiritual journey and there's the fun aspects and the beautiful aspects, but also too the evolution on a collective level requires looking at all of those places and spaces, and that's where we bring light to to everything. And so I love that so much.
I love that as you're talking, I'm having some very vivid visualizations coming through from my higher self. I'm like, really? But what they're showing is like, the current experience of birthing a human being, right? Which of course we know has been very much shifted from the original template of manifestation of physical form here to much more visceral, tangible, and slightly barbaric, at times experience. But so you're going through and and you're creating, and this and this being's like ready to and there's all layers and levels of joy, of excitement, of and of feeling all of it, right? But on the end, at the end of the journey, it's profound, it's profound, and that's so symbolic, I feel like, of, and there is no end to the journey, and of course we know that, but as we birth this next stage of ascension and of the resurrection of our crystalline DNA and architecture, it's like you wouldn't do it any differently, at that point where you're kind of coming into sort of the ebb of, an integration process, right? Because the freedom and the sovereignty experienced is beyond, any linear comprehension.
Yes, yes. And as you're sharing that, the imagery that I am receiving is that of an animal. And, we know that we can learn so much from animals. And really, when there's a storm coming, what does an animal do? It connects with its senses. It really connects with its own multidimensional nature, and it, grounds itself into the ground and hunkers down. And I think that is like what I'm seeing in terms of, the level of embodiment and the level of connecting with our physical senses.
Yeah, so such a huge thing to bring in. I'm so glad you brought it full circle to that, because it's our natural tendency to take flight, to, when things are getting intense, when the ground feels as though literally it's moving, because, our relationship with the space-time continuum is more and more of these plasma diamond light frequencies and full spectrum of solar frequencies are coming in. There's literally this space of and felt sense of like the dissolve of reality, the dissolve of our relationship with, linear time. And it can be very uncomfortable, especially for those who, like to hunker down in, a more controlled environment, right? So surrendering and letting go and, going with the flow, yes, breath and movement and all the things discussed, and staying home in the body, right? Because as we know, this is not an ascension cycle where we leave the body as we have in previous lifetimes, which probably most of us on this, community connection have done already, right? It's about ascension. It's about going to the depths of our cellular DNA and our physicality and resurrecting the highest expression of our, angelic templates and, crystalline nature, so that all that choose to come in and incarnate in future bandwidths of, incarnation are coming back and through into a system, into a matrices of physicality that holds the, original source codes and, and templates of knowing thyself as source, knowing ourselves as a pure field of unified consciousness and connection, right? And navigating as the multidimensional technology that we are, right? Which of course we all know, we hear about, and we're slowly, ingesting into a greater level of embodiment. But we can't really, I mean, as far as I've been shown up until this moment, this is about ascension. This is about coming in and doing the work, on our, in our homeland, right, in the physical body. So when you were sharing beforehand, like the grounding, like we've been hearing it since moving into, January, and like the greater, and it's just like, growing in momentum, like that requirement to really find ways to connect in the greater comfortability of doing the work within. And that also leads to the call for self-nourishment and self-love through all layers and levels of what we're ingesting, right? Food, sound, what we're watching, what we're connecting with, on all levels. So that spring cleaning that we always hear about is like on steroids right now.
Yeah. It's like, what feels like a full body yes, and embracing that. I mean, the word pleasure just keeps coming up, and it's almost like it feels like, pleasure is a taboo word almost, but it's such a beautiful, connecting with our own sacred pleasure, and that these are themes around, Taurus, the Taurus North Node, which is ruled by Venus, and really connecting with our senses and that which brings us pleasure, whether it is, the foods that you're, eating, or what you're consuming in your physical environment. It's all so important. We're so sensitive to everything.
Yes, everything seems to be up-leveling the sensitivity. And one thing I feel like I'm hearing as you're sharing about pleasure is, connecting with all layers and levels of what pleasure, of what is being sort of experienced as pleasure, right? Because sometimes when we're in relationship with food and different things like that, there's been so much emotional hijacking and distortion and mental hijacking and distortion. So, checking in with and through the 0 point, right? With your own internal compass and wisdom center, right? Coming back into that place of sovereignty and empowerment and saying, okay, well, let me try this on. Let me see, bring the energy of the movie that you're considering watching, bring it into your heart space. How does my physical body feel? How does my mental body feel? How does my emotional body respond to this? How does my spirit feel in this, right? Is there a cohesiveness? Is there an overall felt sense of joy and pleasure? Or is there like some deep sort of contrast taking place here? Okay, let me set that aside. Try on the next thing, right? Because sometimes the greatest pleasure we can experience is through what is in the highest and best interest, for us in any given moment. And we may not associate necessarily drinking, a green drink necessarily with the mental imprint or the emotional imprint of pleasure. But perhaps our physical body is like, so excited about it when we bring it into our heart center that we realize that upon that level of pleasure and excitement and resonance, all other systems are like on board, right? So I feel like it's all about experiencing, like you're saying, playing, having fun, checking in, and really further attuning our own internal compass and wisdom center to each now moment, and knowing what works for us today could be completely different than tomorrow or the next day or next week.
Yes, I love that you brought that through because I think it's so important and these things shift all the time. So sometimes we can, have, something that we're doing that's a routine or a way of working out. I noticed myself personally is like, a way that I typically would work out and it was like, no, this really isn't the energy that my body wants to move in. And really allowing that and accepting it and saying, okay, how does my body want to move? Really asking those questions, like what feels like a full body yes at this time, bringing it into your heart.
I love that you keep coming back to that because we were giggling about it. I don't know which one of you magnificent beings, and I'm certain it's one of you that's on here right now, brought this in like a few months ago, and it just keeps playing over and over. You were like, if it's not a full body yes, then it's a full body no. So if there's a little bit of not on board with the yes, then it's a no, right? And so I feel like, that is a beautiful way of self-love and self-compassion and navigating through these next layers of what's being brought forth.
Yes, I completely agree. We have some fun energy that's coming through in Aries. The Aries new moon is on April 1st.
Oh, nice.
Yes, which is a great time, right? Like we're just kind of in this void space of like anything and everything is possible. Mm-hmm. And I think with, so much Piscean energy, we have a stellium right now in Pisces and in the sign of Aquarius. And Pisces is that like mystical dreamer, dreaming a new dream for the collective, which is so, so beautiful. And this is a beautiful time to really, connect with your own dream and dream even bigger. Give yourself that permission to dream a new dream for yourself and really allow that to come through and spending time with it and honoring whatever it is that is on your heart to bring forward.
I love it. And what I'm seeing and hearing in that is grounding that into physicality too, creating a vision board, some practical things that we always hear about, but, grounding it in, writing, journaling, taking pictures of things, creating portals through the pictures that are assisting in the further grounding in of what it is that, you're bringing into creation, right? So assisting, and having fun in the flow of the manifestation process by doing fun things that are further kind of feeding the emotional fire, stoking that, excitement within to come into reality.
Yes, 1000%. Because truly, the Aries season is about action. It's about forward movement, so it's like taking that dream that we're dreaming and then what is the action that actually, lights you up, that is that divine spark that you wish to follow, and not following necessarily what's practical or what, is on your to-do list, but like really following what is bringing you joy, what is on your heart to bring forward in this now moment.
Yeah, so beautiful. I feel like we have some questions brewing here.
That is blowing up. Let's take a look. Intuitive dance. Yes, that sounds so fun.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that really has been coming through so much, like dancing, like nobody's watching,
dance,
like just going, feeling into the body, letting it. And I think that's such an awesome way to really give yourself permission to unwind, because as you're doing it, if you can be in this place of, free of judgment and just the witnessing presence of what comes through and comes up, there can be a lot of release, and then laughing at ourselves, like, so powerful.
It is.
Like if we can just look at ourselves and laugh at ourselves and, and shift
it and move.
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard for me to laugh at myself when I start dancing.
It brings, I was talking about that as a laughter meditation. And, because laughter is such beautiful medicine, and whether it's, dance or whatever it is that evokes laughter can be so fun during this this time.
I love it. Love it.
Dana says the energy shifts are happening very fast for her.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And to Dana's bringing, and as she said that, I'm, instantaneous sort of drop in of seeing, how that's working for her sort of on a quantum level is, further attunement, her further attunement and connection to the center point, right, to the 0 point. When we navigate from that place of, the epicenter of our eternal existence in the 0 point, and as the neutral observer, as in that place of surrender, okay, this is complete unknown. Wow, talk about moving through and embodying quickly, right? It's when we're in any form sort of resistance or identification with programs and roles and characters that we've introduced into our hologram of fear, that we create sort of that slowing down. But the thing is, and to Dana's point, it's not actually slowing down. It's just it's like being in a wave pool and somehow your strap got stuck at the bottom. So now you're just getting now the wave just keeps coming and you have no way, you're forgetting how to surf it, right? It's like, okay, getting in that center point, allowing ourselves to sort of, okay, this is intense, and if we can hunker down in the present moment and as the witnessing presence, right, a neutral observer of it, we can do amazing things in a very seemingly short amount of linear time.
Yes, that's so beautiful. The imagery of an ocean, always comes through, and that is that like going with the waves, going with the energy.
Yeah, the riptide, right? It's a perfect teacher. It's like if you fight it, your resistance to it, you're going down. I mean, essentially. I mean, I don't know that many people don't in that situation, but if you just, okay, let me just go into full on trust and surrender, then you get, you're not sure where you're going to shoot out, but you're essentially going to make your way out of that pocket. I love that.
Lots of action, lots of fiery, fun energy going on in the chat. Mary Grace, that's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Oh, what tea are we sipping on? Yes, we are sipping on an herbal chai, tea. It is really delicious. Thanks for reminding me I had tea. As a collective, any energies for the transmutation, the shifting of the zero-sum game of capitalism towards what is mutuality? Harmlessness and kindness. I'm so curious to see how this will unfold. Yeah, I think, in that epic alignment with Pluto, we are going to really start to see, and I know you can speak on this even more and more of what we've been hearing about the shifting of the old paradigm, the shifting of systems and matrices that are no longer, in alignment with the flow of unified consciousness, of higher systems of exchange of energy, and that dials down on, all levels down into what we currently know as exchange, But what can you, is there anything more that you have been kind of tapping into with that?
Yeah, well, Pluto in Capricorn is a very transformational energy around, rebuilding structures and systems. And, that square between Uranus in Taurus can be like a very activating, fast moving energy for that. And so we're seeing it, like we're seeing that dance, we're seeing, systems gradually kind of dissolve. And it really, I believe, is, that collective intention, that collective energy, like it is all of us doing the work, doing our part, dreaming a new dream for humanity.
That's totally what the download I'm getting right now is, like going back to that dream that you're talking about. Not giving our power away to thinking there are all these other people out there that are going to assist in the creation of this taking place, like coming from that place of just sort of waiting and holding our breath, right? But being a part of that as you're creating that vision board, as you're creating the vision board, maybe it's an internal vision board, a felt sense of what it would feel like to navigate through, each and every now moment, knowing, trusting that I am superabundance, that I am in the flow, that I am, a profound, infinite manifester source being, right? And being a part of the collective consciousness that creates and grounds that dream into physicality.
Yeah. I mean, I really truly believe that one of the greatest gifts that we can give for humanity at this time is to focus on our own individual timeline. There can be a tendency to focus on the collective timelines, but when we bring in the highest energy and, like you're saying, superabundance for our own timeline, it has a collective ripple and effect. And I think also too, one thing that I think is a really significant energy will be the conjunction between Neptune and Jupiter, which happens on April 12th. And Jupiter is a planet of expansion, and Neptune is sort of like this mystical, urethral, spiritual planet, and it's a magnification of creativity. And so this is a really powerful time to connect with creativity for new innovations, so for new imaginings of what's happening. It can also be a sort of a bifurcation, if you will, because there is the shadow side of Neptune is a little bit of a delusion. And so I feel like we'll see that in a sense of people's choice in terms of what reality they're choosing and what they're desiring to create. So I feel like it's so important, more important than ever before, for us all to hold true to what's on our heart and what we truly desire at this point in time.
Yeah, I love that. And when I hear source coming in to really, further exude in this, is that just remember, we in fact are infinite creator beings. And so the more we are in awareness and from that seat of observation, from the witnessing presence of the thoughts that we're thinking and the words that we're speaking and the actions that we're taking, all of those things are massive influencers. You talk about influencers on social media and all these, but yes, of course, but we're massive influencers. And so every thought, every word, every action, right? So allowing ourselves to create mantras, allowing ourselves to create, the felt sense of what it would feel like, participating in our own way, to your point of, maybe a lot of us have connected with Marina Jacobi and have the opportunity to do again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do a question and answer. But, she's a profound being and walking the walk, living it, right? And really has been a catalyst for my own journey of really going into exploration of greater ways of energetic philanthropy. And I have to say, I've only just begun to dabble in it, but it is so beyond liberating. And there's such a purity and such a just felt sense of just freedom. And I don't even have the words to actually match the felt sense of what takes place when you don't box people in, you don't box energies in, when you honor through whatever way we can and choose to, that honoring of the energetic philanthropy. Because honestly, what it feels like for me, or how it's translated for me, is like, okay, I no longer am trying to hold any sort of system to determine where each and every sovereign being is on their path here. They have the ability to determine that for themselves through what they're desiring and what they're capable of bringing forth in exchange. And I don't have any attachment to what they, you know what I mean? And it's so freeing. It's really, so there are these ways in which we can take actionable steps towards creating, the ripple effect for all layers and levels of, energetic exchange.
That's a great example, because truly it's a form of a system that, we can explore completely new ways of, envisioning, imagining how.
Yeah, yes, because, a lot of times we get, self included, when we're thinking about big systems like that, financial systems and everything else, we're still running subconscious programming that of like, oh, well, I don't know because I didn't go to school for finance and I don't know anything. But the thing is, even better, you are the perfect candidate for the co-creation and the rebirthing of exchange, because you haven't been indoctrinated and fully imprinted, in that level of interaction with it. And so, it's all about thinking outside the box. It's all about owning and connecting and embodying the infinite creator beings that we are, that are meant to create anew in like every now moment, right? So I feel like a huge catalyst of this diamond sun plasma belt that's really opening up to epic levels of connection with all different layers and levels of portal connection, to bringing in and connecting to these source codes, in accordance to each one of us individually and uniquely with our blueprint, is our ability to really own our creator energy, right? To create from these new spaces and places.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's never a bad time to say go out in nature, but it feels like a really, really good time to really go out in nature, to connect and to simplify. And I think that, connects back to what you were sharing earlier about the spring cleaning. It's like, how can you simplify your life to create this flow, this effortless flow? And that is a new energy to kind of spring forward with.
Love that.
Ooh, new action here.
Okay. I get frustrated at times with the softer language we use within our spiritual circles of light workers. Like, these coming years will be easier because you've done your inner work. Yes, there are going to be many opportunities for neutrality, and while all of that is true for us, but I think that language and perspective can also keep us separate. Oh wait, you skipped up. Sorry, I lost my place.
We're all knowing is that crap will be hitting the fan. Not to create fear, but as light workers in service, we need to meet people where they are and where they're at in order to assist moving beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, too, what's beautiful to connect with is that we are the choosers of our choices and the choosers of the lens of perception in which we navigate through it. And the more of us that have this sort of connected wisdom and knowing and apply it and share it and remind each other, even, on a daily basis, really bringing that in, it can help us to navigate through what simply doesn't feel pleasant, in a way in which we don't accumulate and connect and entangle ourselves more, right? So it's real. The struggle is real, for many, self included, and yet all the more reason to kind of pull from this, this toolbox of skills and gifts and abilities. And I think, and I know for Kayla, who brought that through, you being a profound being, and way sharer, it's like, yeah, all the more reason for us to get out there in whatever way feels, supportive and nurturing and loving, and share all of, layers and levels and perspectives of the facets of the diamond that represents, this existence right now, right? And, being real about it, right? Meeting people, getting down, and dirty with where people are in this. And so, yes, yeah, it can feel like, through some of the languaging that comes through, it can feel as though there's almost permission for spiritual bypassing. And certainly, that doesn't really put us in a position of exponential embodiment and growth. Yet also, I feel like the more we can see the glass is half full, and really assist ourselves in, in holding that lens of perception, the smoother the flow.
Okay. Larissa, commented about the intensity of families and friends and just so many things breaking so fast. How can one stay within the breath when that's been an issue? Such a beautiful question.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a beautiful question because through all the different layers of, genetic manipulation and overtaking of our nervous system and, brainstem and the reptilian brain center and fight or flight responses, our natural, often natural default is to hold our breath, right? Is to kind of hunker down or like, okay, what's about to happen? Like, am I going to, get another pummeling of someone else's projection, and so forth, right? And yet, as we know, it's just like that self-talk, right? Self-talk, walking ourselves, allowing our higher self, commanding our higher self, commanding our oversoul to come in and be an assistant, right? In this, the self-talk, walking us off what feels like maybe a ledge, and really assisting us and reminding us to go back to the basics of, okay, let me take a moment. Let me create the space. Let me create this non-negotiable moment of connecting to my heart center, taking some deep breaths, calling in the sacred source consciousness of breath, and assisting myself in grounding into my physical body, connecting with myself, remembering that I'm source, having this wild human experience right now, right? Taking our systems out of fight or flight, commanding, with an I am present of a statement of I am divine peace. These little things that sound almost like, but when we choose them and we redirect our consciousness, and our thoughts, our words are constantly creating the reality within our cellular makeup, right? And so our physical bodies, our emotional bodies, our mental bodies, our spirit bodies are constantly attuning to what we're bringing through in way of thoughts and beliefs and words. So finding those ways to just reset, right? To your point, letting out a sound or a scream, doing a funny dance move, or like, redirecting, reprogramming, rewiring our natural, or what has become our feeling as our natural response or reaction, and coming into this place of like, okay, let me regroup, let me reset, let me come out of this feeling of being showered with, pennies right now, right? And, come into a place of connection.
The breath can be such a powerful and alchemizing tool for that. And, also I hear, the frequency of compassion.
Yeah.
The frequency of compassion, there is, there is so much that is happening during this time. And I think it is a calling forward of compassion for the self, radical compassion, and, compassion for others, that we're all on our own unique journey at this, time and space. And so for everybody, it's going to be different, and really honoring, everybody, whether it's friends or family that maybe are on a different path, that have, different choices or different soul lessons that they've come in to experience. And just, also too, I think it can bring up emotion, right? And that's human, and really allowing the time and space to feel and honor all that arises.
Yeah, I love that question because no one brings forth greater ability for expansion and evolution than our biological family members and our extended family members. I mean, hands down, it's like grand opportunity after opportunity after opportunity because, through the societal constructs of, the archetypes of the family, right? We have grown accustomed to staying, really interconnected with them and almost feeling like, there's no escape from the projection of whatever their current hologram, hosts as energy. So giving yourself space and permission to, and I think the vehicle and the expression of compassion is one of the most omnipotent ways of doing it. Self-compassion, right? Okay, I'm going to just create some space here. Like, I'm going to create some space because this is really intense, and these projections, and and I am divine compassion, right? And okay, the more and more we embody self-compassion, the more and more we embody compassion for all. And really, that's true. I mean, I know we hear that it's become so cliche and sort of watered down, but it's couldn't be more true. And I feel like when I even shift my intention, even if I feel like a sense of frustration or like, if I shift my lens and my focus and my intention into compassion, and I take some breaths with it, and I allow myself to come out of any, feeling or sense of judgment of the situation, judgment of myself in the situation, judgment of others, and come into that place of neutrality, and compassion, we can reframe things. We can reframe things, and we can transcend things. And more so now than ever before, because I don't know what everybody else's experience is, but that whole thing that was an intellectually understood concept for many years of instantaneous manifestation of inner relationship with the projection of your reality, happening like on epic levels.
Yes.
So yeah, I love that you brought in compassion. And Larissa, I for sure sometimes feel like, putting mute on the phone and letting out a big, like yell, or sometimes to get ourselves to a place of being able to breathe, we need to let out an exhale first, which sounds really counterintuitive. But if we can, and then it allows for us to have sometimes a greater capacity to then take the inhale.
I love this question, Martine. Is there really going to be a massive awakening in the coming months? What would be your sense of this? My sense of this is that it will be really determined by our own reality that we're creating. And so for those that are feeling and sensing the shift, it will be profound and palpable. And, that is kind of, ties back to this sort of bifurcation of experiences of, us all being in our own unique hologram. And, we talked about, periods of time where there is a great acceleration or, rapid transformation that has, taken place historically. And the people that are, those that are really tapped in and experiencing that, and, are going to experience that, I think, on a deep level. And I think, I feel like for some, I think it's going to be different for everyone, to be honest. I mean, what is your sense of that?
1000%, because everything that we've consciously and unconsciously brought into our own unique hologram of energy is in constant interfacing with the quantum field of all that is. And so there's infinite and massive timelines in existence in any given second, and the creation of that continues, So it's really about, again, getting into the 0 point, getting into that place, that power, sovereignty, freedom position of the 0 point, right, of neutrality, of present moment, and determining, what do I, as a creator being, as an infinite expression of source consciousness, now embodied in a human suit, truly desire to be my creation of reality and my expression during this time, and then being in a witnessing presence of anything that floods in from the thinking mind, the egoic mind, that is in resistance to that, or opposition, or creating belief systems and so forth that are in polarity to that. Because that's a sure, that's always, a very easy, low-hanging fruit of the polarity of the core essence of our nature as creator beings, right? So it's like, anything that comes in is like, oh, thank you for that gift of showing exactly what still exists within my hologram that's creating resistance or opposition to me, to fully embodying myself as an infinite manifester, so it's like, okay, So yeah, I agree. Like there really, it's going to be unique to every single being based upon where we are in any present moment of what we're hosting within our hologram. And also too, based on our blueprint. And as Gaia has so beautifully shown us, we're capable of transcending even our own blueprint. But it really, and not but, really requires us to come into that place of owning ourselves, and identifying with ourselves as the zero point, as an infinite creator being, capable of creating anything as our reality. And the only thing that creates sort of that felt sense of distrust in that is, are the frequencies, that are still existing within our own hologram that, are still desiring to be witnessed and transmuted and, the fractals of consciousness to come home. So the more and more we do our spring cleaning, the more and more we clear our field, peel away the onion, the layers of the onion, however we've heard it, truly, the grander the navigation is, as the manifester, as source in its grandest expression of embodiment.
Beautifully said.
Thanks. Wish I could take credit for it.
Great question. That was amazing. I think that we
Read it.
Yeah.
For all the questions.
Last questions. Any suggestions to call forth the inner child and let her feel okay to take the reins, releasing seriousness at times?
Oh, hi, Linda. Love you. Yeah. I feel like just in having the awareness that you desire to have that experience, and to allow for that to be, this next part of this deep and greater embodiment of self-love, it's already in manifestation, right? So it's allowing yourself to bring forth and to focus your intention and your directing of your consciousness into assisting yourself in creating that reality, right?
And I can totally relate to the seriousness.
All the time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that question because, the Virgo full moon, which, a full moon, we always are releasing something. It really is such a beautiful invitation to release that self-criticism, that, seriousness, that perfectionism. Those type of energies are really invited to be released at this time to move forward and create with, more play, more laughter, more fun, and really connecting with that, childlike sense of joy.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that came through as you were talking is that, when we allow ourselves to really just connect and embrace every single aspect of ourselves as divine perfection, when we set forth that intention, and even if it feels inorganic in its initial application of saying like, oh, this is, but when we really allow ourselves to view through that lens, which is the childlike lens, right? It's that lens of pure innocence, of pure, unified consciousness, of pure acceptance of everybody for who they are, with just curiosity. We allow ourselves to very much disengage from the seriousness suit, of which we've all had a grand experience with. Just, by existing here, because it's so intertwined and so many layers and levels of, societal imprints and collective imprints.
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, if you look at children, they have playtime and they have nap time, and why not, as we grow older, why do we not still have abundant playtime?
And whoever created that timeline that, like, once you get to this age, I'm gonna have to call
this being.
Yes,
creating that anew. 2 questions. How do you feel when you channel? And how do you not doubt the information? Because sometimes it is so clear and I have a sense of profound knowing, but sometimes others I don't. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline. That's an awesome question. So, I can share from my experience and, with that. is that, the more and more and more we command the embodiment of our oversoul, we command the embodiment of, of our higher self and oversoul. And, and we trust in ourselves as source. We trust in ourselves as, in the flow of eternal, self-realization and exploration, right? It just becomes easier and easier and easier just to trust what it's really truly, you become more and more embodied as the oversoul, and you become more and more embodied as the witnessing presence. It's like you hear about that and you understand it intellectually, but then when it starts to happen, it's like you don't even have those layers of doubt that flow through. You're just in the flow of it, and you're just in your heart center, and you're just allowing it to come through. And when you're testing it out, and you're feeling into it, what my experience was with it is just, allow ourselves to sit with it a little bit. Okay, why does this feel like, why does this bring forth a felt sense of questioning as to whether it's, clear? And, and just allow ourselves to explore it again with curiosity, right? Not in a sense of judgment or any sense of fear, but in a place of like, okay, let me just explore this. The other thing that I've personally found so profoundly helpful is that I command my, my space constantly, my inner space, my outer space, all space. I command to be a vehicle, of pure prime source creator, light, love, wisdom, truth, clarity, transparency, compassion, grace, ease, freedom, sovereignty, abundance, gratitude. I command that. I command I'm a vehicle, of the highest and most pristine divine clarity. I am the will of source. I am the will of source, right? And so I bring this forth. I have a moment. I have each time I connect in session, each time I connect in any, expression of communication where I'm asking to be a vehicle, a channel, and it just becomes more and more just an extension, of your expression, I would say. And I would say also too, I command to attune to, pure prime source creator consciousness, any and all frequencies that are fully aligned in the highest prime source creator consciousness in accordance with the highest divine law and order. So when you command that you're, in whatever resonates with you, you command, that you're connecting to the highest frequencies of consciousness in accordance with the highest divine law and order, then you can also trust in that's exactly what's coming through, right? We can tell when something's coming from the heart center and we're just in the natural flow, and when something's trying to come through the thinking mind, right? And when we feel that, the difference in that, it's like taking a few minutes, dropping in, allowing ourselves a pause, allowing ourselves permission to maybe even, say, okay, I'm just going to pause from this, from this exchange or this stream right now. Let's drop into our heart spaces, right? Because there's a lot of different things constantly coming in and showering us. And so, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. What is your experience with channeling?
Yeah, I feel like it is a muscle that is strengthened over time. And, it is that the mantras have really helped me as well. So I love that you share that, because that's been a really helpful tip in my journey. And then trusting, I know that in the question you bring up doubting, but trusting that whatever is brought through is in the highest and best, and that it's meant to be shared. And really, I think the more that we honor the self, and it really comes back to that self-love and self-honoring, the doubt starts to diminish more and more.
I love that. One thing that I think, and I'm so glad that thank you so much for bringing forth this question and your wisdom, is that it's such a huge encouragement right now to be able to build that, to build the trust muscle, right? To go within, to really allow ourselves greater permission to do that. And one way in which we can embody greater trust is just to pause for a moment, because there's, there'll be different energies and frequencies and chaos frequencies and, patterns of self-doubt and consciousness, traps that are interfacing us. And one thing that can always redirect us into being the clearest vehicle of divine clarity and integrity is to drop into our heart space and get, what is my intention, right? What is my intention? Because nothing outside of us could ever determine what our intention is. And our intention is a clear indication of who we are and why we're here. And so what is my intention in this now moment? My intention is to be in the greatest service to all beings, seen and unseen, in accordance to the highest divine law and order. My intention is to be a vehicle of the highest, prime source creator will, right? Whatever it is. And attune yourself to that and watch and witness from a place of neutrality and curiosity, what then reveals itself to be, mixing in with that doubt. And, because when we redirect and connect to our intention, and everything else that's in polarity of that just drops off. It's so interesting to watch it. And you can then see with greater clarity too, again, what was at play.
I've been practicing that, and I really can share that there is like a washing away of any nervous energy, because it's just aligning you with your true north.
Yeah, because our mind is not going to be the calibrator and the attuner to our intention, right? It can try to create that, and it often does, and it takes us sort of out of, the now moment. Our heart is the epicenter and the holder of, of immaculate intention. And so when we drop into our heart space and we connect with that, it's like, okay, here I am, right? And I do really love the I am statement, I am the will of source, because I feel like any of the stories, any of the systems of, make-believe that the thinking mind is trying to bring forth when we're channeling or when we're in conscious conversation or whatever we're doing, can instantaneously be melted away and sort of fall, slip down the glass, if you will, when we attune to, I am the will of source, because we are source. And when we tune to I am the will of source, we're attuning to the highest expression of ourselves as source, through, by way of oversoul. And it's like so easy, because then we realize, oh, wait, I don't have to do anything other than attune to that. And, the thinking mind's creating this whole mountain that needs to be climbed, and like this whole thing that, and so I find that extremely helpful. And additionally, I just want to drop in really quickly, because this is kind of coming through, and it certainly has been coming through my own experience of the last, I'd say, linear year, but ramping up now as all of these energies are ramping up, is that beautiful wisdom, that sage wisdom, that, universal foundational mastery of not taking things personally.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Couldn't be more omnipresent than this now moment, because as we're all together as a collective navigating through and trying to find our way, and there's a lot of projection taking place right now, and it's so easy to find ourselves getting energetically entangled in it if we run the energy and the projection through the personality complex and the egoic complex. But when we drop into, I am an infinite creator being, I am divine compassion, I am divine neutrality, I am that, and we take whatever it is that's been brought our way, and we allow ourselves to disengage from taking it personally, then we are able to see the clarity of it, the clarity of how we are, participated consciously and unconsciously in the, in the manifestation and magnifying of the exchange in, in a clear way. And we can also see where it is that it's coming from within this particular being or group of beings, which allows for us to have greater compassion, because it's only in awareness and the bringing in of light that we are able to, to truly embody compassion. And we can really only navigate to that space, I feel, from my experience, through the 0 point, through the present moment, through neutrality. Let me step into this place of neutrality and take all frequencies that are present into clear consideration here, before making my next move.
So profound, so helpful right now during these times.
Relying on it every moment. Every moment of every day recently. Yeah.
Divine clarity. I mean,
yeah.
It is.
But when we do that, it's such an act of self-love, but it's also such an act of unconditional love for all of humanity, because it's become such a this warring and this place of projection and not taking ownership and blaming, and that when we can on our own, to your point of earlier, like go within, change the financial system by changing your financial system, right? And you're interfacing with it, and you're shift the reality of humanity and this long cycle of of projecting and taking things personally, and and yet never really getting to the root cause of or imprint, right? When we do that, because it's just like ping pong, projecting back and forth. When we stop it in its tracks and disengage, it is so freeing. It's profound. I really am embracing it. It's a very, to Kayla's point, sticky and uncomfortable, and so many emotions come up, as things are taking place, and character assassination and stuff like this. It's so easy to default into a place of victim or a place of taking it personally. But when we can stop, check in, what is my intention here? What is my intention? Who am I? And let me disengage from taking any of this personally and shift in. Huge. Talk about massive soul alchemy, like witnessing it instantaneously, manifesting in your life.
Yes, I feel that. It's palpable.
Yeah. It may be, and I know Don Ruiz, like one of the first things I ever read on the ascension journey. And at the time I read it, I was sort of like, one of those things where you're like eyes crossed a few times. But like, I didn't realize, the 4 agreements. Like, so profound and so timeless in its truth and wisdom. Yeah.
One question that I know that you can answer well, that came through, which is really, deciphering between when you're channeling, different collectives or the Pleiadians, for example, versus your higher self. How do you distinguish?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I feel like it's shifting and changing, all the time, as the more and more and more we command the embodiment of our oversoul, and and we command the embodiment of and identification with ourselves as source, everything changes exponentially. And so what I would say is, when there is a particular so there's so many different entry points to this question, because everybody's sort of experiencing, channeling and connecting at different, layers and levels, and everybody has different architecture and so technology, so they receive it in different ways. And so it's really just, again, it's about playing around and trusting. And what I would say is, we don't have to wait for a collective to come to us. We can ask, and command sounds very abrupt, but honestly, they don't take things personally. That's just a human thing. So, we can call forth and, okay, I choose in this moment to connect with the, with the 12th dimensional ancient Pleiadians, and let me pose a question, right? And then we call forth, we breathe, we connect, and we start to get a felt sense of what that energy feels like or looks like, or, because everybody's going to receive it in different ways, right? And you just start to get, an understanding of what their energetic signature feels like, and then for some, it's much more visual. So there'll be something that comes forth that you have, in your studies or in your exploration, maybe have associated with Pleiadian energy, right? So it's like, it's trusting. It's calling forth, it's feeling, it's going into the heart center, it's going into a place of stillness, into a place of 0 point, right? And allowing ourselves to see how our energy is going to respond to that energy. You know, what that looks like, feels like, and practicing with it. I would say more and more and more you integrate your oversoul technology, your oversoul presence. My experience with it, and again, I don't desire to project this on anyone, because of course I know we're all unique, is that it comes through as a one source collective. So even though in transmissions at different times a particular collective or a group of beings may present themselves and distinguish themselves as, you know, like the 18th dimensional indigo avions, or, you know, the diamond children or something of this nature, more often than not, it comes through as a one collective of pure prime source creator consciousness. And so more and more we embody our oversoul, I feel the more and more we embody all fractals of our consciousness that are participating throughout all space-time continuum, of which we know is of infinite nature, right? And so they come together, you know, in more of an expression of a one voice, a one collective, attuned by, you know, by our oversoul. But again, there's so many ways to answer this, and I feel like what came through is just, you know, kind of scratching the surface a little bit.
Helpful tips and tools. I love those. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and such great questions. Yeah.
Okay, so in your transmissions, you're not asking, so you've just gotten more familiar with the energy, color, or voice. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the transmissions that come through right now, what's taking place the more and more, you know, I command the embodiment of oversoul, is everything is becoming like in a greater sort of viewing and awareness as this massive sort of infinite expression and layers of holographic expression, right? So it's, I mean, I can see why people who have a massive Kundalini awakening, you know, end up having Kundalini syndrome, because if in fact the veils, you know, through the shifting and the melting away of the veils of illusion is in fact what it is that I'm seeing when I'm channeling now and when I'm going into transmission, if that were just to have dropped upon me one day instantaneously along with a massive amount of energy, yeah, like what? You know, like fracturing, yeah, for sure. But as we, you know, participate consciously and so forth, and we go into, you know, and into at our own pace, and we command it with grace and ease, right? The embodiment of it, the more and the more we trust, which allows for us to have the greater sort of expansion and awareness of this massively holographic sort of quantum field. The more it's just like you just know. It's just a direct knowing. It's just a direct connection, a direct knowing. There's really, you know, no doubting it. It just comes through, and you're just, you know what I mean? Like you don't even have time necessarily to doubt it, because you're in such a connection of 0 point that doubt doesn't exist really, right? And of course we know that every channel is unique, and so what comes through me may not resonate with this person over here or this person over here, and so, you know, and that's beautiful, right? We can feel into that. Coming back full circle in this conversation, such a grand opportunity for us to embody our own empowerment, our own connection, calibrate our internal compass to feel into what resonates as the highest truth for me in this now moment, right? Hopefully that answered that.
Yeah, so interesting, and I feel like all of this is kind of opening up new pathways and really, you know, dropping in. So I feel like this is such an expansive and fun.
I know, I love all the questions, you masterful beings, you.
Yes, Kundalini 101. Yes, sign me up. Absolutely. Wow.
How are you feeling? Like you want to do a little oming and sort of a conclusion to this
Let's do a little
connection field.
oming and join together. Perhaps, maybe placing one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly if it feels good. Just closing our eyes.
So anyone who desires to participate or feeling called to just bring through a beautiful connection and conclusion to our co-creation here by bringing in some deep connections to so dropping into your heart space, dropping into this now moment, really honoring and celebrating whatever is taking place as your unique reality in this now moment with full permission, free of judgment, free of criticism, whatever it shows up as in this now moment, just full embrace. And as we do so, taking some deep, nourishing inhales and exhales, preparing our divine instrument to bring forth the sound, and flowing in whatever connection with this that feels right. Allowing ourselves to come into that soft embrace, unique and divine expression of pure, radiant source consciousness that each and every one of us are. Feeling that felt sense of groundedness and connectedness to our heart centers, such a deep, overflowing felt sense of gratitude and appreciation for each and every one of us that have joined here in this space of heart-centeredness, in this space of authentic expression and connection, sharing in the waves of expression of energy and astrology that feel present now. And as we move forward in our next now moments, feeling that continued felt sense of support, love, embrace, nourishment that comes from this greater embodiment and sharing of the unified field of consciousness. Deep, deep gratitude for this moment, for this experience, and for each and every one of us that has shown up here. So it is, so it is, so it is. Thank you, thank you. Oh, totally pieced me out.
Just state of bliss. Beautiful. Thank you all.
Thank you, and looking forward to seeing, feeling some of you perhaps tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we connect with this divine and profound beauty, Marina Jacobi, for a question and answer. Some of you may have experienced when she joined us last time, and she brought through a massive and radiant transmission, and she was kind enough to embrace the invitation to come and just do a full question and answer session tomorrow. Yes. So we're really excited, and we hope that you come if you feel resonance with it and bring forth some further questions and whatever feels right. So
yes, and also we do have Rebecca Campbell coming up on March 31st, and that's at 12:45 Eastern Standard Time. So we'll be sending
Yeah,
out.
so excited. I don't know if any of you have connected with Rebecca Campbell, but her energy is just like a soft, pink, fluffy cloud of divinity, but also so grounded and so wise and so, super connected multiversally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so looking forward.
Yeah.
All right, well, love you all and see you soon.
Love.